Welcome, everybody. Let me make sure I know what date it is. It is Thursday, March 12th, 2026. We are here with Stride Live, Season 3, Episode 4. And I am joined by one of my good friends in the MSP space, Terrell Jackson, President and founder of Culture Fits. How you doing today, TJ?
I am well, man. I'm well. I'm excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. I know you put it on the calendar. We talked a few months ago, and I know this is one of your busiest times of the year. For those that don't know, TJ is the owner of Culture Fits, which is a national staffing partner in the MSP, MSSP space. 15 plus years of experience. He helps MSPs not just with technical fits, he's helped Stride try to find potential controllers that understand MSPs. I have yet to find another professional talent acquirer like TJ who understands the space truly and isn't just looking for a placement to try to get a number and somebody in. And today, what are we talking about? We're talking about the true cost of a bad hire for an MSP. This is something that I hear all the time. I hear, one, when do we hire? We don't know who to hire. We don't have the systems in place to hire. So today we're going to cover all of that. We're going to cover how to place, what the costs are, and not just talking about the physical costs, not just talking about, oh, you deal with bringing someone in, but what are the financial implications, not just of having a bad placement for salary, but as it relates to your gross margin, your profitability, your ability to grow. So my first question is going to be really simple. In your opinion, what is that true cost of a bad hire? Where does that start? How do you even evaluate, is it a good or a bad hire? Where do you start in your process with that, TJ?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The most expensive hire is within an MSP. It's not the highest salary, right? It's the
Mhm.
wrong person in the wrong seat. Because when that happens, you don't just lose money. You lose utilization, you lose team morale, and eventually probably, client trust. A lot of MSPs don't fail because they lack technology. They fail because they put good technicians in the wrong roles or hire people who can't operate in a high accountability environment. So every hire either protects your culture or erodes it. And in an MSP, culture isn't about perks, right? It's not just about perks. It's about accountability, about ownership, about how your team shows up for clients every day. So
Mhm.
yeah, it can go way past just financials. It can erode culture as well.
Yeah. I always, and funny enough, firms called Culture Fits. Culture is something that I think, especially in a remote environment, that you see many MSPs, more and more MSPs hire people in multiple states. They have employees, clients across the board. How do you go about evaluating culture with an MSP? How do you say, hey, I understand the technical needs. You need somebody who can do Cisco or Apple or has, level 3 help desk. But where do you go and how do you evaluate culture? And where does that process start when saying, hey, I want somebody who's going to be able to jump in and not just be able to be good from a skill standpoint, but can be a good member of my team that, people like to work with on a daily basis?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So I'll tell you a little story. My first customer about 5 years ago was an MSP here in Dallas, Texas.
Mhm.
Um, about 4 years ago, there were maybe 21 employees, maybe close to 4 million. They actually sold to PE at
Okay.
15 million with 63
Wow.
employees. So I exclusively placed 70% of that staff.
Oh my
One thing I
God.
recognized is that they were all like-minded individuals.
That's
They
good.
hung out together. They went to lunch together. They played board games together, video games together, right? And so I really honed in on what does it take to really have a great culture. And I noticed with this particular CEO, he had very, very strong core values. Some out of scriptures out of the Bible because they were a
Yeah.
faith-based organization,
That's yeah.
but he had very, very strong core values, and I noticed that everyone aligned to that. And so,
Mhm.
when he came to me, he was like, "Hey, TJ, you know what? I'll give you a shot. I need an engineer, but if you don't find anyone, guess what? You don't get paid." I was like, "Okay, very well taken."
Fair enough.
But it's more about, and when I find out, it's not just the technical contributions; it's how they mesh with the
Yeah.
current environment. And we've noticed here at Culture Fits, when somebody is a complement to your core values, they
Mhm.
seamlessly get integrated with any part of your team. right? And that's what matters most, because you want like-minded people to be behind the strategy as to where you want to be, especially if you're operationally mature, right? So it really does matter. I mean, culture can kill a whole department. You know, if
Yeah.
you got that one guy who just pretty, selfish, right? And his approach in handling problems, that's not going to work well with a very high collaborating team.
Yeah, yeah. I think I've talked with a couple people in the space and some MSP sales guys who talk about what is the cost to bring in, because that's one of the areas where it's really difficult, to hire is a good sales or a business development representative, especially in the MSP space, because you have to think there's that initial 3 to 6 month investment if they've sold in your space before. But realistically, there's a couple guys that say it's 6 months to a year before you're going to see a return on investment. And a big part when you evaluate a sales professional, it's not so much their technical know-how. I mean, yes, they need to understand systems and management and how to negotiate, but they're going to learn from you the natures and in and out of your business, especially most MSPs are founder led in their sales and driven. So they're going to learn from that. But you have to find somebody that you mesh with. You have to find somebody who's really looking to be a mentee and wants to learn and isn't going to come in and say, here's how it's going to be done from a sales standpoint, which, obviously that comes with some sort of benefit. Oh, no, they can manage a CRM, they can manage a pipeline, they can build a pipeline, but you really have to say, hey, are they somebody that I'm going to enjoy working with and is going to collaborate with my team? Because that's what I tell, because I often get asked, by MSPs, and I don't do any of this. I don't place, I don't recruit. I've hired before, but where I come from is I say, well, when you're evaluating a sales professional, get to know them of what they do outside and get to understand what is their primary motivators. Are they compensation driven? Are they, experience driven? Are they achievement driven? Are they results driven? Meaning, hey, they just want to win. They don't care what the deal is. So, and when you find that, you're going to say, okay, how does that align with our culture? How does that align with how we grow as an organization? Because if you're somebody that, for instance, MSPs that don't have that solid process or that sales handoff, like if your owner's involved in that sales process and the handoff to operations and part of implementation and onboarding, probably not going to be a great fit to have salesperson who just wants to clean their hands at the end of the sales cycle. You're going to need somebody that's more like business development oriented, that wants to be a part of building a solution, not just a sale, and then helping making sure operations can onboard that solution with a high success rate. So I think that's where I see now when you help these MSPs hire sales professionals, what are some of the challenges? Because I know in this growth oriented market, the M&A space, MSPs are like, I want to grow another million, 2 million in top line. Where do you see some of those challenges and costs of a bad sales hire specifically for MSPs?
Well, I agree with you, because a lot of MSPs, they interview for the resume and not for the
Yeah.
role, right? They're looking at behaviorals that require for the seat, right? And to
Yeah.
your point, not that person, right? Not that person. What does that salesperson do in their pastime? That's what I'd
Yep.
like to know, right?
Yeah.
Even taking them out in public and having a final interview over lunch, right? How does he
Yep.
respond to that server? How does he or she respond to that server? Is it politeness? Is it empathy? Right? So it's, and I've learned in MSPs, you got to have the soft skills. You just
Yeah.
have to, right? Even in any role, given, let's talk about a service desk engineer, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I'll tell you, I couldn't take calls because I would get frustrated. I would get so frustrated. And for a service desk engineer, you need empathy, you need patience, you need communication skills, right? And
Absolutely.
and for a project engineer, you need structure, you need planning.
Mhm.
So when those traits don't align, the hire struggles, even if it is technical skills that are there,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
It's
And
funny you talk about the. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, and a lot of that, I know that you deal with a lot of MSP firms from an accounting perspective, right? Those bad hires should show up in accounting.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
MSPs typically aim for what, 50 to 60% gross margin on services. A
They
bad
try.
hire can impact that.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
billing utilization drops. More work gets escalated to senior engineers, and it takes longer than even budgeted. So then
Yeah.
your gross margin erodes, right? Your effective hourly rate drops. So a lot of that is even seen on paper. I mean, the numbers don't lie.
Yeah. Yeah, there is, we see that pretty frequently where it's like, hey, we had a couple new clients, we got some big projects, we ended up hiring this person, we're about 6 months in. And where we see some of the lacks on our side is they're not tracking, time, they're not tracking utilization, they're not allocating their labor to cost of goods sold. And there is a little common misconception, like, yes, your managed services should be, that 60%, 65% gross margin of the true managed services. But then when you
Hmm.
look across what is best in class, SLI gross margin across all revenue buckets for an MSP, it's 48%. So you can see, okay, if I'm only making 10 to 15% at the most on hardware and software subscription resales and projects, that's where we see a lot of that gross margin bleed. Our projects really underscoping or over allocating resources, not holding time, not holding, agendas, not doing those things right. Where you see, oh, this could have been a 50%, 60% gross margin project that has now become 10 to 20%. And that's where we usually see is, hey, why is my managed service? And they're like, oh, no, no, my managed services, I'm at 60% gross revenue. But then you look at profitability and they're either 0% or 3%. It's like, where is that going? Well, more often than not, it's going to either underutilized technician or operational labor, or it's overhead and administration. I can't tell you how often I find somebody where they're paying a bookkeeper, an accountant, some office manager that role. You're talking 4 to 8, $9,000 a month, and the books aren't closed or
Mm.
tickets aren't open. There's no tracking. There's no management of, hey, sales to operations to accounting, and there's not that flow where it's like trying to find the right person really comes down to not only the skill set, but do you have those structures in place for your organization? And this should hit home with the MSPs. All of your clients' MSPs don't build their own IT department because one, the cost, two, the resources, three, building the structures, building the policies and procedures. So you have that implemented for your clients in terms of controls, building those process and controls. And I think the cost of a bad hire is this somebody we should hire or should this be outsourced? Is there another
Hmm.
alternative to this? I see a lot that they put account management on bookkeepers or accountants when it's like, well, no, your managers, your account technicians, the ones who are managing those clients should have some sort of responsibility. But if you don't have somebody who can build departmental reporting, an itemized P&L, a budgeted time and forecast, like it's going to be really hard to gauge the success there. And I think, one of the ones where if an MSP takes a step back, it's easy on the personnel side. I mean, I'm sure you see this. I'm going to hire a technician. Our average hourly rate across all of our managed services are $200 an hour. If I'm paying this person 70,000 a year with an all-in cost of payroll, everything else of 85, thousand a year, let's say roughly, their utilization needs to be, let's say, 60% to get break even and profitable. Like
Hmm.
that's the conversation when you're looking on the operation side you should be having from a numbers and cents to say, no, we have the budget, it's going to be profitable, we need this, we're under capacity. But on the overhead, the administrative, the other areas, the sales, the marketing, the second layer of leadership, that's where it really, I think, culture has to be the number one focus first because it's really hard to gauge profitability on those. You're really looking for efficiency, scalability, and then reducing time of other areas. Are the people servicing the clients able to spend 90% of their time doing that, or are there things internally, operationally that prevents them from doing that? And I think that's what we see as the most common instance of where in the accounting, finance, tax world of those implications. And then I think the second one is, justifying from a tax perspective. Okay, I'm going to hire somebody in a new state. Does it make sense to? What does it look like? Do we need to file a return now? Most of the time, if you have an employee, you have operations in there, you have to file at least a business return. Most of the
Hmm.
time, unless you have a large amount of gross receipts and triggering nexus, whole different thing. Talk to a tax accountant about that, talk to a CPA. But I think when you look at the cost of a bad hire, it's where is the role and where are they at? Now, when you talk about the operations side, because I think this is one where an MSP owner, they want to build that second layer of leadership. M&A says it's important. SLI says it's important. Hell, just scaling in general business practice says you need that second layer of leadership so that business owner founder isn't the whole, rainmaker, the catch-all
Hmm.
be all. How do you find yourself in there educating these MSPs that are saying, hey, I'm 5 million in revenue. We have 10 or 11 employees. We're there. I'm still overseeing operations. I'd really love to hire a COO. How do you help them through that process of saying, like, do you help them build a structure? Do you say, here's the type of person? Like, where does that conversation lead? Because I know that's a huge topic from our MSPs that we talk to. That's one of the biggest areas is really that second layer of operational leadership. How do you go about helping an MSP find the right person and implement that role for the first time?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing would be is to understand what success looks like for that person. I totally agree
Yeah.
that mid management needs to be there. That could be a lot, just on one person to manage that,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to operations, because there's so many logistics to that could go wrong. And again, to
Yes.
your point, when it's affected, you know, bad hires end up having to. I mean, as an owner, if you have a bad hire, I mean, that could cause scope overruns, that can cause rework, that could cause project delays, right? And so, the impact is that the MSP has to write off time and absorb the cost, right? You got a 40-hour project turns into 60 hours, but the MSP can only bill for 40. That's 20
Yeah.
hours of lost margin, right? And most of it, I would say, if it's not the right person in the right seat, it's the lack of operations, right?
Yeah.
And those are the things that I like to identify. I ask the owners, like, what's the biggest problem that you have right now? What's keeping you from being able to meet your SLAs, right? Because if they don't think in that aspect, then they're just worried about putting a butt in the seat because they want to delegate and elevate some of those responsibilities onto somebody else who might not really be a good fit. So we really hone in and speak to the owners as far as what they're looking for, what type of leader are they looking for in mid management, and what does success look like. I think that's very important because if you come into an opportunity in a role, especially when it's operations, one, you don't have a good framework. Two, you don't have the right person, then you just cause more chaos and probably lost in your revenue as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that definition of success is so important because identifying the end goal and why you're bringing this in, and sometimes it's higher level. It's, hey, no, I'm a $3 million MSP. I want to get to five, but my techs are at 80% utilization, 85. I'm missing opportunities on services because I'm not able to sell and close those deals. And I think it's, we see a lot of MSPs, well, I need to sell more of my operations. So they're like, let's hire multiple people. And it's like, well, no, what is the area that is easiest to offload? If sales is really hard to build that process because you're an MSP owner and you're also in operations, you can't sit down and say, like, for instance, one thing I do at Stride is how do I standardize Casey Seaborn? How do I take things that I do and build those a standard process so somebody else can take those off my plate? But so many business owners, regardless of industry, it's hard to find yourself in that space where you can focus on one pillar of your business. I mean, at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, there's four main pillars. You have prospecting, you have sales, you have operations, you have collections, accounting, the whole back office. If
Yeah,
you can't focus on getting one thing, and usually the easiest place for an MSP is to offload is that operations, you have to give up some of that control. It can't be always, hey, no, every client knows TJ, and that's why. No, they need to know culture fits. They need to know
that's right.
stride. They need to understand the business and the brand that's there so it transcends so they really buy into that adoption from not only a client perspective, but then also that customer relation perspective. Because I think one of those other costs of a bad hire that people don't think of is what some people call that burnout multiplier. You bring in a bad hire, it stresses out other leadership, it stresses other technicians, and now that person who was supposed to be that fill that role, let's say they don't have the structure, they don't have a literally tough onboarding, 3 to 6 months, they're still not at a 40-hour capacity of work, like that weighs on everybody else. And to your point, that's one of the number one killers of culture. Feeling like somebody else is not pulling their weight and isn't
Mm,
buying into the team. And a lot of the time, it's not because just the employee. It's so easy to make that blame when it's like, did I set them up for success? Did I put a structure in place? Did I spend the time to educate? When I first brought on my business development associate here at Stride, it was a little tough because I found myself in that conundrum of, oh, I can just do it myself. If I just do it now, it'll be done in a half hour, an hour.
yeah.
Instead of, no, I need to take 2 hours, build it, standardize it, and then teach and train. And then I'm going to have to meet with them a couple times and build this process just to check in. But now that you do those things, for instance, Stride Live, I jump on, I plan, I get the guests on. He helps with posting. He helps get everything else. He has that process, and then we review. And now it's a machine and a system that works where it's like, oh, now I'm able to go to more events. I'm able to know and be like I was Tuesday, Wednesday, was in Chicago. Stride Labs were produced, episodes, content, people were there. And it's like, because I spent that little bit of pain up front,
Hmm.
that prevention, the whole thing, what is it? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Like that's the whole idea when you're bringing a hire in for that layer when you're trying to offload. Because it's really easy to say, I lost a help desk technician. I need to find another one. That's a little bit, there's culture, there's things, but they have structure. But it's those other areas, especially the mid management, where I see personally a lot of these MSPs and professional services getting, I've gone through three COOs in 4 years. Well, why? Why is that? Is that because of structure? Is it because your industry? Is it because there's not enough talent? And more often than not, I don't know if this is your experience, it comes down to that lack of structure and support for the employees and really building
Absolutely.
that standard procedure.
Absolutely. And I mean that's a very strong point,
Mhm.
and regardless of what role you play within an organization, the smart numbers tells the story, right? When
Yeah,
utilization drops, when escalations increase, and your EHR declines, those are often signals that
yeah,
there's the wrong person in the wrong seat, right?
yeah.
And so one of the things that we like to do, hence the name of our company, right? Culture Fits. In fact, one of my clients actually gave me that name. I didn't have that name at first. And,
Well, shout
he
out
was
to
like,
that client. He set up, now you got a business for years now doing this. That's great.
yeah, he has since then sold to PE too. So, but it was a great journey working with him. He just said, you know what, TJ, you're so embedded into our culture. Why don't you change the name to Culture Fits? And I mean, I did it, and
That's
one of the
awesome.
things that one of the reasons why I did it is because we look beyond the technical skills. Because again, that wrong hire is not just impacting that team. It shows up in your financials and the time, and by the time it appears in your financials, I mean, the damage is already done, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
one of the things that we do to help customers, we have personality and cognitive assessments that we give for whatever role, right? And we also provide an interview guide based off of that role. And so I've even noticed that a lot of people just don't know how to hire. They don't know how to hire. They don't know what questions to ask, and they don't look for the red flags, right? And so when you are ignoring those things, that's easy to hire someone that's not in the right seat,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And again, if one of those things fall off, I mean, if I can give you like one powerful story and can tell you about somebody that I had, and it caused him so much financial damage. It was an
Yeah.
MSP that had a level 3 engineer. I mean, the guy just thought he was God Almighty, right? And by the time he ended up, by the time he really got acclimated to the opportunity, a lot of the other employees just didn't care to work with him because he thought he knew
Yeah.
it all, right?
Yep.
And so then now you lose collaboration and team morale, right? So I mean, it really, really, it's very strategic, and we help MSPs do that by being an extended arm to HR, right? Giving you that wonderful interview experience to a great onboarding experience, and that's what we pride
Yeah.
ourselves most on.
Yeah, I think that is a key point that is really specific to the MSP industry around talent. There is a lot of ego. This is complex. This is technical. This is type A's across the board of personalities. And I think there's, somebody told me about this. This was, where was I at? I want to say it was IT Nation. It might have been 𝐓𝐫𝐿, but it was last year, talking about like how does this affect the employee brand, like in the employer brand, like, oh, am I bringing in an A player, a truly A player, or am I bringing somebody that's a B or a C player joining my organization where not only my employees are going to feel the burden of, man, this guy really thinks he's, God's gift to earth, but in reality, he's struggling with level 1, level 2, or he just has one skill set, or he doesn't follow procedures, or she might not be, process oriented. But you also see that as what people call quiet churn, where your
Hmm.
clients feel like this. Back when I was at our MSP, we literally had a client and we brought this guy on. He was, we really need somebody on the Cisco side. He had great expertise, phenomenal. Like literally, you could not put a better person on paper. 20 years, helped develop, worked in the military, government. He was such an a-hole. He was just not somebody you want to deal with, where we had clients call and we ended up having to say, hey, we're gonna have to move on. And we literally just used him for contract project work because they were like, can you send somebody else? When you have a client saying send somebody else, that means that you are now at a risk of not only this person costing me, I'm paying them and they're not bringing in revenue, but now it's that opportunity cost of they just cost me a client. They're costing MRR, and that's absolutely unacceptable. And Gary Vaynerchuk, he's great with this, and he has a great thing about culture matters and employees. I don't care if they're your top performing sales. If people don't like working with them, if they're not a good person, you got to get rid of them. And I've experienced that. I've been at places and organizations where it's like I've seen top performers move on because culture mattered most, and those
Hmm.
organizations thrive. But I've also been in organizations where they kept those people around because whatever it was, family, nepotism, no, they're good or they do well here, or I'm afraid of not keeping this person anymore. And you see that cost, it's like carrying that chain or that cinder block on your ankle while trying to run a lap. It's not going to work well. You're going to
Yep.
be held back. And I think that's hard. And then there's that other concept. I don't know if you see this, like, how often do you see like that legacy debt or that ripple effect? Like, no, hey, TJ, we had a bad hire. This COO or this technician was just awful. This engineer was awful. And now it's kind of our clients don't feel it hurt our trust. And now those clients have bad configurations. How do you approach a situation like that where somebody's already been burned and you're coming in to try to find a person who can not necessarily fix the situation because it's not on one person, but can be a part of that collective solution for an MSP that's been hurt and needs to make a little bit of a recovery here?
Yeah, no, that's I get that often, and
I had a feeling.
yeah, yeah, and what I tell owners is that just because you got burned doesn't mean you should stop, right?
Yeah.
I'm not here to try to get a job to fill the seat. I'm here to help you. I look at myself as a growth partner. I'm not putting
Yeah.
butts in seats. I'm helping you grow, right? So I think the main focus is offering what does the right MSP actually look like. We all talk about how we've gotten burned. We always talk about what happened, right? And then the aftermath is that you still lost out on money, right? A bad
Yep.
hire can cost you 20 grand easily, right?
Easily.
But what
Easily.
does the right MSP engineer look like, right? And it's I would say it's someone who combines three things. One who's technically curious, right? Has that ownership mentality and holds themselves accountable, as well as client empathy, right? The best
Wow.
engineers don't just solve tickets, they take the responsibility for the outcome, right? So they'll
Yes.
stay on a problem until it's resolved and make sure that client feels supported along the way. That's what a good hire looks like, a good engineer. And sometimes we don't really focus on that because we're always worried about the bad, right? It's always like somebody will believe a lie before they believe the truth, right? But sometimes we
Yeah.
have to give them the truth and saying, this is what good looks like. And that's what we like to do in supporting our growth for our MSPs.
Yeah, I think that's it's so funny because this isn't a space of abundance. I hear MSPs. I was just in Chicago and CompTIA hearing about, how we're going to deploy AI and all these opportunities, but for whatever reason, it you have that fear of negativity. It's that scarcity mindset when it comes to employees. It's almost that end all be all. And I understand that from the human connection, the empathy of, this is another person, this is their livelihood. I feel bad. But there's also that responsibility of transparency saying, hey, I need somebody. And it's like dating. You really got to be transparent early on. And I think a big key in hiring is this is another one I was early on was instead of worrying so quick about like, oh, we're going to take forever to hire. No, you should hire fast and fire a little bit quicker if they're not the right, or move on or transition. Like so many
Mhm.
say, no, we're going to take this long and screening. And I've seen clients take 3 months to hire somebody only for that person to leave a month later, 2 months later, as
Yeah.
I'm sure you have. And I think that's where there's that other cost of like, where am I going to apply this person? What are the parameters, like you said? What does success look like? So you can gauge, okay, this person's on that path of success. Because we all know this entrepreneurship, success is not linear for anybody. It's not this. It's no, I brought a new hire in. Oh, they learned pretty well. They got a good grasp. They missed a couple things. No, they're doing great with clients. They got some good procedures. Oh, they helped build something on an SOP. Yeah, but now they're struggling with this process of what we do. Is that an opportunity for me? And I think that's the other thing. When you look at hiring, it should be seen as an abundance, but it should also be as an opportunity. What a great opportunity to find something about what works in your business, where there's places that you can build better processes. If you can bring somebody on, for instance, Stride, we just hired another, controller, brought on literally last week. Within a week, because of our systems, already jumped in on 3 clients and real applications. And, she came from like a more financial wealth management accounting background, and now she's able to jump in and already managing multiple clients. And that is not just because her skill set. Great background, good skills on paper, but like you said, the culture's there, but then the systems of support on that side are here where it does. Like it is a big learning curve, and it's not going
Yeah,
to be easy. I've been in that day one of an MSP as a part-time business developer. Like, what am I doing? What is this? How do I sell block? Where are these things? And I think it's when you give them that structure early on to say, hey, it's going to be a lot, but that's on purpose. We want to
mhm,
expose you to see where you can handle and then where are the opportunities where we need to lean in more instead of, I feel, and I don't know if you see this, kind of like almost breadcrumbing, like, oh, I got a new employee. Let's start them out really easy. Let's give them a little bit. Let's give them one thing. And I think that's actually, in my opinion, and if you have a different, please don't feel like you have to agree. I think it's better for mass exposure as early on. Let them see the situations of what they're going to be handling so there is no ambiguity. There is no like, you know what? I actually thought the job was going to be more of this, but it's this. No, like bring them in. Let them see your ecosystem.
absolutely.
I think that's huge.
And I'm sorry. Yeah, no, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, no,
I
no. I ramble, so
100%.
you have to.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that because it's really about connecting that employee to your operational framework as to
Yes.
where it is. And it's funny because one of my clients, an owner, said this. He's like, I like to allow my employees to see everything, whether it's the good or the bad, because you'll know who's ready to jump ship, but you'll also know who's willing to jump in, right?
Yeah.
And to your point, that's really good. Having someone, you know, maybe a little bit out of the scope of their job description, right? And learn something, right? And if he accepts the challenge and learns from it, then there you go. You've just enhanced a current employee to be even better, right? And
Absolutely.
that could be rinsed and repeated all through the organization. But again, it comes down to with culture, it works alongside of operational framework, and that is what makes the business successful because you got the right people in the right seat. Everything else from service delivery to growth, that's when it gets easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're actually, I can continue this conversation for another half hour because I think it's so imperative, but we're just gonna have to bring you back on here and talk because I know there's some other things like we're talking about the bad side, but like, what are the other opportunities? People are the platform. I know it's something that you talk about a lot, and then how to build that right hiring execution. We'll have to have a different topic on that because we got to
Oh
wrap
man, I
up
would
here.
love to.
So, what I'd love to do, TJ, is for those too long, didn't watch, don't want to read, 1 minute. What is the 1 minute summary that you could say for an MSP, the true cost of a bad hire for an MSP? What is that 1 minute piece of advice a business owner can take today?
The true cost of a bad hire is that it will not end until you fix it. You got to have those honest discussions, right? We look at each other. I look at these owners as peers, right? Owner to owner, and having those conversations. Being less tactical and more strategic, having those honest discussions about burnout, about leadership gaps, when to hire versus when to fix the process, right?
Yeah.
And so, all of these are examples of what can really be done to improve where you are operationally. One thing that I always like to compliment MSPs on is improving their current processes, and this is what we're best at. We look at what you have going on and we help you improve it, right? That alone right there will allow us to find the right person in the right seat. But again, it's not really just about placing people. It is a level of operational maturity. And if an MSP doesn't have that, you'll find there's going to constantly be chaos. So we like to kind of keep that away from you. We want to kill the chaos and keep you productive and efficient. So for those out there who are struggling with hiring, I'm here for a soundboard. You don't have to utilize my services. Again, I'm a growth partner and I want to help you grow. So Casey, thanks again, man, for having me on the show. I
Of
certainly
course.
look forward to doing this again, man. It's been fun.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And yeah, if you guys want to connect with TJ, we'll have a description. A blog will be on here. It's on our LinkedIn page, YouTube. You can go to stride.services. Our website will be there. You can connect directly with him. You can reach out to me at casey.seaborn@stride.services. I'll make a personal introduction for you. I promise that MSPs, I know we say it. We say, hey, you got to spend more time building and working on your business, not in your business. This is another one of those conversations. This is another, hey, do you have a couple hours next month to go through this process to get it done? Your life will be better if you take the time. You will be able to say, why am I spending 80 hours a week to saying, oh, I'm only working 40 hours a week. Oh, I'm 30 hours a week and I can actually have a day with my kids or I can go pick them up every day after school. These are things that I see and I've seen happen not only from an accounting, a personal development, and operations side. It sucks. We talk about it all the time. We want to just work in our business. We're doers. You got to take the time to work on the business. And I think that's really
Agreed.
that main arching theme is unless you take the time to build it and build the structure to get that higher, it's going to be really hard to evaluate. But then once you have those in place, like making sure you know, okay, what is that definition of success and is this a good hire, bad hire, and having those systems to evaluate so you can make that move. Because don't wait 6 months, 10 months, 11 months where, clients churn and revenue goes down, gross margin, you're bleeding cash and you're wondering, how did we have more revenue this year but less profitability? A lot of the
Hmm.
time it comes down to either you're not pricing enough or you have too much going into your services and costing too much. So, TJ, I
Yep.
really appreciate it. Once
Thank
again,
you.
like I said, we'll get you on another episode. Feel free to connect and thank you everybody for tuning in today.